think actually, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I think one of the reasons I was first considered for this part was when Brian saw a film I did called The Good Nurse, and which is a true story about this horrifying sociopath, and I did find connection between this piece and that, in the sense that, for those who haven't seen the rest of the series, I don't want to give away spoilers, but he does lead these kind of two polar opposite lives, and he manages to lead them both fully, and somehow he believes they will never connect. And being able to play these sort of almost two different characters, but finding like the links and the lineage between them was part of my curiosity.
Yeah, I think they both dress meticulously. They're both into the, particularly with the Jackal, who's very much into the craft of what he does, and he clearly takes a great deal of pleasure putting those clothes together. And that was a huge draw for me with the work. Like Eddie and I really dug into all of those characters. We spoke about the narratives behind the backstory of people like the janitor that you've just seen. So even building the body, before we even started costuming, we had to build it from the body out, and then work with the prosthetic artist to make sure the face matched.
I would just play it as honestly as possible, and the audience is sort of reading something opposite from it. But that was definitely one of the appeals, and the other appeal, which was something that married with Cabaret, was the character, really, and the scripts that I first read by Ronan were a sort of celebration in craft, whether that was, you know, the makeup, the languages, the sort of physicality. It felt, and the scripts felt like they really dug into that, the idea of this assassin as performer, and that was like completely intoxicating. There was an amazing moment in prep when, because the Jackal is this peacock, but Natalie was like, I want you to come to Vienna to this extraordinary outfitters, this tailor called, you pronounce it?
Knuse.
Who is, it's this amazing Austrian tailor shop, and the shop is built by Luce, the architecture is staggering, and this guy, this family-run business have been dressing like the royal family in the 19th century. This amazing man got out the book and showed us all of the different measurements of the Prince of Wales in the 1880s, and how as he got fatter as he got older. But they also dressed Marilyn Monroe, James Dean, and Natalie was so wonderful, being like, we've got to come here because a lot of the European tailoring was done there. But also the experience of being there and meeting him, like the tailor just embedded so much in who this character was thrilling.
I guess, you know, in combination with Brian and with Richard, the production designer, it's sort of trying to make story-based and emotion, character-based decisions on how an audience should be feeling at a certain stage. You know, the Jackal himself is a challenge because he murders people.
Spoiler alert! Thank you, Kristen.
And the I guess the point of the visual language of the film is of the show is to try to, like a magic trick, entice you and seduce you in the process, and then you are empathetic with the prestige.
You know, I've really got under my skin, and I don't think I've ever felt so like flexed as an actor because the character's an actor, and it was joyous in that sense, like getting to work with Natalie, getting to work. I mean, because he's so meticulous, I can't basically work out. I'm probably a control freak, and I think the character's a control freak. And this is a joyful way in which to work in collaboration, because every element, whether it was, you know, I remember there was a bit in which the prop was a suitcase, but it has to be a specific brand of suitcase. I was talking to Richard, our production designer, about his home and what his office looked like, because anything that, and Chris and I would talk about, you know, the specificity of shots, because it's a dance, really. Everything that he does is there is a sort of ruthless, refined, I describe it as like a knife through butter quality, and that took really a huge amount of preparation and lots of teamwork, and that was really thrilling. And I did. It was hard work. It was at moments brutal, but I do miss him. I miss that little sociopath. Well, to see formidable that was, she was a producer on the piece, and in post-production, she comes from a very musical background and has a real knowledge of that world. So her discussions with our music supervisor were always so in depth, and it was actually her suggestion for Celeste, who is the singer who sings the opening credits, who has the most extraordinary voice, and we spent a long time trying to find someone that, what we were hoping to do with the series was marry that kind of elegance and that old school analog quality with something that was very contemporary and now. And Celeste, I think, with that song, does that so magnificently, and that was, LaShawna's.
I have to say, I never skipped through any of the opening credits because I love her voice so much, but also the opening credit sequence assemblage, because again, it's that sort of marriage of the sort of traditional and the modern, and then she has that great sort of Nina Simone smokiness, sort of married to sort of the action, the opening credit sequence, really is about the sort of the intersection that the show is about, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also a very iconic statement of the center of the show, which is the title of the song is "This Is Who I Am," and it's a show that worries at multiple levels over questions of identity for its whole duration. So it's a really fun way to capture all of that. The first conversation I had with Ronan, he said that he wanted to tell a story in which everyone lies about everything all the time, and the visual corollary of that is that nothing is as it seems. So, and from that sort of jumping off point, we were obviously telling a story about a global manhunt, with a protagonist and antagonist who are apparently polar opposites, but in fact mirror images. And then, within that, you're leaning into the tropes of the conspiracy thriller, frames within frames, worlds within worlds, reflections, silhouettes, anything that challenges the sort of the surface of reality and makes you question what's underneath that. And it's a real feast and it's very connected with the characters, and to a man who is a chameleon, who's a shapeshifter, and to a performance that sort of draws on wonderful technique, incredible emotional expressiveness, but also great storytelling. So the visual language is trying to draw that out and complement.
Say that is, I've worked with this amazing woman called Alexandra Reynolds, who is a ex-dancer who I first worked with on Theory of Everything, and she helped me with some of the different characters and the physicality of the different characters in this series. But the first thing, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Brian, but one of the first things we did when we had our sessions together is she showed me this interview with David Bowie in the 70s. And it was the first interview he had done dressed as him. And he, not only were we looking at it for his stillness, but and his kind of almost deference whilst being completely in charge of the situation. And you were just so drawn to him, but also he's talking about using clothes and as disguise and being away from himself, really, and so that particular video I would play every morning in my trailer, and was a big influence. So it's interesting that you bring him up. You're talking about the watermelon scene.
Yes.
So there's a scene later in the movie in which is in the series, which is iconic in the original movie, and the director Anthony of that particular episode decided we were going to pay homage and literally shoot it shot by shot, which was a sort of revelation because I spent so long watching Edward Fox's performance, trying to work out how to do it. And the hardest thing he does is when he sets up the gun to shoot the watermelon, he throws this rope around the tree and ties the rope to the tree, and then he puts the gun in it and sort of turns it round in order to use the rope as his. I had a little pole put in my trailer and a rope. I spent about 3 fucking weeks going like, okay, catch the thing. And it transpired that basically catching the rope was the hardest part, whilst making it look effortless. And so I'd always admired this particular scene in the original movie. When it came to replicating it, my admiration for Edward Fox went through the roof. Was that in the original movie, it feels quite binary, in the sense that the Jackal is bad, albeit deeply charismatic, and the Michael Lonsdale character is good, and de Gaulle represents good. What I loved about what Ronan had done here is that there was greyness morally to everyone. In the same way that Lashana's Bianca is fighting for good, she's also, as we see, willing to compromise deeply morally. Sorry, and similarly, the Jackal, for all of his sort of hideousness, there are also moments of heart that you see, and then with this UDC figure who you guys haven't met a huge amount yet, but on the one hand, the target, the de Gaulle figure, is looking for financial transparency and a better world, but at the same point there's deep megalomania in it, and I found that felt very true to the state of the world.